Sarah's heart raced as she stumbled through the alien landscape. The ground beneath her feet was rough, uneven, and filled with strange, glowing plants. She had never imagined being so far from home on an unknown planet, stranded with no way to return to Earth. The air smelled different, heavy with the scent of unfamiliar flowers and the faint hum of alien machinery in the distance. She was supposed to be on vacation, but that was before her ship had malfunctioned. Now she was alone, with no one to help her. It felt like she was trapped in a nightmare, with no way out. But then, as she wandered deeper into the planet's wild terrain, something caught her eye. A massive structure, half buried in the dirt, stood towering in the distance. Sarah's curiosity got the best of her, and she carefully made her way toward the mysterious ship. As she got closer, she could see that it wasn't just any ship. It was an alien vessel, one unlike anything she had ever seen. Its design was sleek and elegant, yet ancient, almost as if it had been there for centuries. The ship seemed like a relic, abandoned and forgotten. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was it, the one chance she had to survive. The ship was large enough to contain everything she needed to repair her own spacecraft, and maybe even get back home. She had no idea how long it had been sitting here, but it didn't matter. She had to try. As Sarah stepped closer to the ship, she noticed something strange. There were no signs of life. No crew, no security, no sign that anyone had been here for a long time. The ship was eerily silent. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was a trap, but desperation pushed her forward. She had to fix her ship, and this was her only chance. She carefully examined the hull of the vessel. There were dents and scratches, signs of damage from what appeared to be a crash landing. It seemed like the ship had been through a battle, but it was still intact. Sarah ran her fingers along the surface, feeling the cold metal beneath her. Touch. The ship's power systems were offline, but she could see the faint outline of a control panel. Determined, she climbed up to the ship's entrance and forced open the hatch. It creaked as she pushed it aside, revealing the dim interior. The air inside was stale, but she could still breathe. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the darkness. She couldn't understand them, but she wasn't concerned with that now. She had to fix the ship and get out. She spent hours inside, scavenging what little she could. There were no obvious tools, but she managed to find a few devices that seemed like they might work. She wasn't a mechanic, but she had always been good at fixing things. The idea of working on a broken spaceship didn't faze her. It was a challenge, and she loved a good challenge. Her hands moved quickly as she worked, her focus intense. There was a strange hum in the air as she connected wires and activated switches, trying to bring the ship's power systems back online. The ship seemed to respond to her touch, almost as if it recognized her. She couldn't explain it, but something about the vessel felt alive, almost sentient. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from behind her. She whirled around, heart in her throat. But there was no one there. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Someone or something was watching her. She froze, her eyes scanning the dimly lit interior of the ship. Her breath quickened as she realized that she wasn't alone. Then, out of the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was tall and imposing, a being that looked unlike any human she had ever seen. Its skin was a deep shade of blue, and its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. The figure was dressed in ornate armor, covered in strange symbols that matched the ones on the ship's walls. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The figure didn't speak at first. It simply studied her, its gaze intense. For a moment, Sarah wondered if she had made a terrible mistake, but the figure didn't attack. Instead, it stepped closer, its presence both frightening and mesmerizing. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking. The figure said nothing, but raised its hand, pointing toward her. Sarah's eyes followed the gesture, and that's when she saw the ring on her finger. Her wedding ring. The simple gold band she had worn for years. The figure's eyes locked onto the ring, and Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had no idea why, but something about the ring seemed to have triggered something in the alien. The figure's expression shifted, and for the first time, Sarah saw a hint of something like curiosity or perhaps recognition. Without saying a word, the figure slowly approached her. It reached out, gently touching her ring, its fingers cold against her skin. Sarah recoiled slightly, but the figure didn't pull away. Instead, it seemed to study the ring, its eyes narrowing as if it was searching for something. After what felt like an eternity, the figure stepped back. It tilted its head, as if processing what had just happened. Finally, it spoke, its voice deep and commanding. "That ring, it is not just a symbol." Sarah's heart raced. She had no idea what the alien meant, but one thing was clear. Her simple wedding ring was somehow tied to this alien emperor's past. She had unknowingly walked into something far bigger than herself. The emperor's gaze never left her, and Sarah felt a growing unease. What was the connection between her ring and this ancient, powerful being? She had just fixed his ship, but now she was in danger of becoming part of something much more complicated than she ever could have imagined. Asterisk. The silence between Sarah and the alien emperor stretched for what felt like an eternity. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the emperor. His presence was overwhelming, as if he commanded the very air around them. His eyes glowed with a strange intensity, focused on the ring, yet his mind seemed far from the moment at hand. It was as if he had just uncovered a forgotten memory, a puzzle piece of his own history. "I know what this is," the emperor said at last, his voice deep and echoing with authority. "That ring belongs to a long-forgotten legacy, one tied to the power of the galaxy itself." Sarah stood frozen, unsure whether to be terrified or confused. She had never thought much about her wedding ring, just a simple piece of jewelry that had meant everything to her in her life on Earth. But the way the emperor spoke made it feel as though this ring carried the weight of the universe. The emperor stepped forward, his towering figure casting a shadow over Sarah. "You don't understand," he continued, his voice softer now, almost as if he was speaking to himself. "Your ancestors, they were not just humans. They were part of something greater, something beyond our comprehension." Sarah could feel the ground beneath her shift. What was he talking about? Her ancestors. She had always believed her family was just an ordinary one, nothing special. They had lived simple lives, worked regular jobs. Nothing about them felt extraordinary. Yet here was this alien, an emperor, telling her that her bloodline was somehow connected to this vast, mysterious legacy. You think my family is part of your history?" she asked, her voice trembling. The emperor nodded, his eyes never leaving her. "Your lineage holds the key to the prophecy, the one that foretells the balance of power in this galaxy. You are more than just a stranded human. You are a vital piece in a much older story." The weight of his words pressed down on Sarah's chest. She took a step back, her mind racing. Could this really be true? Was her ring really that significant? She had no idea what kind of prophecy he was talking about, but the Emperor seemed so certain. The way he spoke, it was like he had waited for this moment, like everything in his life had led to this encounter. Sarah's eyes flickered toward the ship's control panel, still humming softly in the background. She had fixed the ship, but what did that really mean? She had no idea she was walking into an ancient conflict. No idea that her simple act of repairing a broken ship would tie her to a prophecy that spanned the cosmos. "You don't have to explain all this to me," Sarah said, trying to regain control. "I just want to fix my ship and get back to Earth. I don't want any part of your galactic drama." The Emperor's eyes narrowed, his expression unreadable. "It's too late for that," he replied quietly. "The prophecy has already chosen you." Before Sarah could respond, the ship's systems began to hum louder, and the ground beneath them trembled slightly. The Emperor looked down, as if sensing the disturbance, and then back at Sarah with a chilling smile. "Your presence here," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper, "has awakened something in this ship, a power that has slumbered for centuries." Sarah felt a sudden rush of fear. The walls of the ship seemed to pulse with energy, as though the very structure of the vessel was alive. She looked around, unsure of what to do next. The Emperor was watching her intently, as if waiting for her to make the next move. "What do you want from me?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking, her back pressed against the cold metal of the ship. "I need your help," the Emperor said, his tone unexpectedly calm. "This ship holds the key to unlocking a power that can change everything, but only someone of your lineage can access it." A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. She couldn't deny that something strange was happening. The Emperor had been watching her, waiting for her to unlock something within the ship. It was all connected: her ring, the ship, the Emperor. She could feel the weight of their combined destinies pressing down on her, suffocating her with the knowledge that she was no longer in control of her fate. For a brief moment, Sarah considered running. The idea of escaping, of returning to Earth and leaving all of this behind was tempting. But something inside her told her that it was too late for that. The prophecy had already begun. Her involvement with the Emperor and the ship had set something in motion that couldn't be undone. "What do I have to do?" she asked, her voice quiet but determined. The Emperor's smile widened, a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. "You must help me unlock the power hidden within this ship. Only you can open the vault of knowledge that will grant me control over the galaxy." Sarah's stomach churned. She had no idea what he was talking about, but the gravity of the situation hit her hard. If she helped him, what would that mean for the future of the galaxy? If she refused, what would happen to her? Her mind raced as the weight of the Emperor's words sank in. There was no turning back now. She had been thrust into a world she didn't understand, and there was only one thing she was certain of: nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Asterisk. As the days passed, Sarah found herself unable to escape the constant presence of the Emperor. The ship, now fully operational, moved through the vastness of space with an eerie silence, its journey dictated by the Emperor's commands. Sarah tried to keep her distance, working on the repairs, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the Emperor was always watching her. His gaze lingered whenever she was near, as if he was studying her every move, searching for something beyond her control. One evening, as Sarah sat alone in the ship's galley, she found herself staring at the strange symbols that adorned the walls. They seemed to glow faintly, almost beckoning her to decipher them. It was as if the ship itself was alive, urging her to understand its secrets. Her thoughts wandered back to the Emperor and his cryptic words, the prophecy, her lineage, her ring. What did he mean by your ancestors were more than just humans? She whispered to herself, the question lingering in her mind like an unanswered riddle. A soft sound behind her interrupted her thoughts. She spun around to see the Emperor standing in the doorway, his blue skin glowing in the dim light. His eyes, dark and full of mystery, studied her carefully. He wasn't smiling this time, his usual confidence replaced with an unreadable expression. I've been studying the ship's history, Sarah said, trying to sound calm. There's something here I don't understand. These symbols, the ship, they're connected to something much older than I am. You said my ancestors were part of it, but how? What does that have to do with me? The Emperor stepped into the room, closing the distance between them. Your bloodline is more than you know, he said, his voice low and serious. Long before the earth as you know it existed, your ancestors were chosen to protect the gateway between worlds. The ring you wear, it's not just a symbol of marriage. It is a key passed down through generations, a key to unlocking the power of the gateway. Sarah's eyes widened. She had thought the Emperor was simply spouting nonsense, but now his words were beginning to make sense. She had always felt a strange pull toward the ring, an odd sense of familiarity, as if it had a purpose far beyond what she could comprehend. But now the truth was unfolding before her. The gateway, Sarah murmured, trying to grasp the enormity of what the Emperor was suggesting. What is it? Where is it? The Emperor's gaze softened for a brief moment. It's not a place, but a power, a force that binds the universe together. The key you carry, your ring, was created by an ancient civilization to control this force. It was meant to remain hidden, safe, until the time came for someone of your lineage to awaken it. Sarah felt a chill run through her. She was part of something much bigger than herself, something she couldn't even begin to understand. And the Emperor, he had known this all along. He had been waiting for her, for this moment. But why me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why now? The Emperor looked at her intently. The time is drawing near. The balance of the universe is shifting. Those who hold the power of the gateway will control the fate of every living being. But you are not like the others. You are the final key. The one who can either bring balance to the galaxy or destroy it entirely. Sarah shook her head, feeling overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. She had come here for survival, to fix her ship and return to Earth, but now she was caught in a web of ancient prophecies and cosmic forces beyond her control. How could she possibly handle such responsibility? What happens if I refuse? She asked, her voice trembling. The Emperor's expression hardened. Refusal is not an option, he said, his tone cold and final. If you don't act, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Forces more dangerous than you can imagine are already gathering, and they will stop at nothing to control the gateway. You have no choice but to join me. Sarah's mind raced as the Emperor's words sank in. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. She was no longer just a stranded human trying to get home. She was now a part of a war for control over the very fabric of the universe. And the more she learned about the Emperor's true intentions, the more she realized that she didn't fully trust him. But there was something else, a flicker of doubt in his eyes, a vulnerability that she hadn't noticed before. As much as he seemed like a cold, calculating ruler, there was something human about him. Sarah couldn't help but wonder, was he truly the villain in this story, or was he just another pawn in a much bigger game? The Emperor must have sensed her hesitation, for he stepped closer, his presence almost overwhelming. "You don't have to trust me," he said quietly, "but you must trust the power within you. The galaxy depends on it." For a long moment, Sarah didn't say anything. She felt trapped in a labyrinth of choices, each one leading her deeper into a future she couldn't control. The Emperor was right about one thing: she had no choice. The fate of the galaxy was now tied to her, whether she liked it or not. With a sigh, Sarah stood up, her decision made. "I'll help you," she said, her voice firm. "But know this, Sim, not doing this for you. I'm doing it because I have to. I'll find a way to make sure the power isn't misused." The Emperor nodded, a glint of something like respect in his eyes. "Then it's time to begin." As Sarah followed him deeper into the ship, she felt a strange sense of resolve settle over her. Whatever the future held, she was no longer just a passenger. She was a player in a game much bigger than herself, and she had to be prepared for whatever came next. But one thing was clear: her connection to the Emperor was only beginning to unravel, and the choices they would make together would shape the galaxy's destiny forever. Asterisk. The days that followed were a blur of tension and discovery. The ship continued its journey through the galaxy, and Sarah found herself drawn deeper into the Emperor's plans. She had begun to assist him with unlocking the ancient systems that powered the ship, using the strange knowledge he shared with her. But each passing moment only raised more questions. The deeper she went into the ship's secrets, the more she felt an unsettling sense that things were not what they seemed. The Emperor, though seemingly open about the prophecy, had started acting differently. He had become more distant, more focused on the ship's systems, barely acknowledging her presence, unless it was to ask for help with his important tasks. Despite her growing suspicions, Sarah still had no real answers, only fragments of truth that she had to piece together herself. One evening, after a long day of working with the Emperor, Sarah retired to her quarters, feeling a strange exhaustion settle over her. She had been too distracted by the Emperor's cryptic words to think clearly about her own situation. But something felt wrong. There was an underlying tension in the ship that she couldn't shake. It wasn't just the Emperor's secrecy. It was something more. It was as though the ship itself was waiting for something to happen, like the calm before the storm. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching her door. It was a sound that had become all too familiar. Before she could react, the door slid open, revealing the Emperor's guards. They stepped inside without a word, their eyes cold, their movements precise. "Come with us," one of the guards said, his voice void of emotion. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The Emperor had never sent guards to her quarters before. She tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. "What's going on? Where are you taking me?" The guards remained silent, pulling her roughly from her bed. Panic surged through her veins as she struggled to break free, but they were too strong. They didn't say another word as they escorted her through the ship, the unfamiliar corridors passing by in a blur. Every step she took felt like it was pulling her farther from the control she had over her own life. They led her into the central chamber of the ship, a massive room that was cold and dark. At the far end, the Emperor stood, his figure silhouetted against the glow of the ship's energy core. His back was to her, and for a moment, Sarah couldn't read his expression. It was as if he hadn't even noticed her arrival. "Your Majesty," one of the guards said, respectfully, bowing slightly. The Emperor turned slowly, his cold gaze locking onto Sarah. His eyes betrayed nothing. He seemed almost detached. "You've finally come," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "I've been waiting for you." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't the emperor she had been working with. This wasn't the man who had promised to help her understand her place in the prophecy. This was a different side of him, one that she hadn't seen before. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of confusion and fear. "Why are you doing this? What have I done?" The emperor's gaze never wavered. He stepped forward, his expression hardening as he looked at her. "Ring. You were a tool, nothing more than a pawn in my plan." Sarah's blood ran cold. "A pawn? What do you mean?" He turned his gaze to the glowing energy core, which hummed ominously in the background. "I needed you to unlock the gateway. But now I realize that your role was far more important than I anticipated. The ring you wear, it's not just a key, it's the key. The true power is within you, and I intend to use it." Sarah's heart raced, her mind scrambling to process the betrayal. "You lied to me. You never cared about helping me. You just used me to get what you wanted." The emperor's lips curled into a cold smile. "I never promised you anything. You were always meant to help me unlock the power of the gateway. You should have realized it by now. It was never about your survival, it was about the future of the galaxy." Sarah's mind reeled. She had believed that she was part of something noble, something bigger than herself. She had trusted the emperor, believed in the prophecy he had shared with her. But now it all felt like a lie. She had been a tool in his plan all along, a means to an end. The emperor raised his hand, signaling to the guards to step aside. "Now we begin." Suddenly, the walls of the chamber lit up with bright, pulsing lights. The energy core in the center of the room flared to life, its power surging. Sarah felt the temperature rise, the air thick with the hum of energy. Her skin tingled as the power began to resonate with the ring on her finger. It was as if the ship itself was calling to her, urging her to unlock the full potential of the power inside her. But Sarah was no fool. The emperor's plan was clear now. He didn't care about the galaxy. He cared only about harnessing the power of the gateway to control everything. She had been a mere stepping stone in his pursuit of domination. But Sarah wasn't about to let him win. With a surge of determination, Sarah ripped the ring from her finger, her hands shaking with fear and anger. She held it up to the emperor. "No," she said, her voice steady. "This isn't your victory. It's mine." The emperor's expression faltered, his eyes flashing with anger. "You don't understand. If you destroy the ring, you destroy everything, yourself included." Sarah's grip tightened on the ring, her resolve unwavering. "I'd rather destroy everything than let you use it for your selfish ambitions." As she spoke those words, the ship's energy core began to hum louder, the lights flickering violently. The ship's walls trembled as if in response to her decision. Sarah felt the weight of the moment, knowing that this was the point of no return. She had to make the choice, stop the emperor's plans, even if it meant losing everything. The emperor's eyes widened, his expression now one of fear. "You don't know what you're doing," he shouted, but it was too late. With one final, determined motion, Sarah crushed the ring in her hand, shattering its power and bringing the emperor's reign to an abrupt end. The ship shook violently as the ring crumbled into dust, its power extinguished in an instant. The once brilliant hum of the energy core faltered, its bright glow dimming as the ship's systems began to fail. Sarah felt the weight of the decision sink into her bones, but there was no turning back now. The emperor's cold, calculating gaze had turned into something darker, something much more dangerous. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The Emperor stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the space where the ring had once been. His face twisted with rage, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. The betrayal he had felt from Sarah's actions was palpable. It was the one thing he had never anticipated. Defiance. You... The Emperor's voice was low, almost a growl. You've doomed us all. Sarah felt a cold shiver crawl up her spine. The air around her crackled with tension, but she held her ground. She wasn't going to let him intimidate her. The Emperor had spent too long using her as a pawn in his game, manipulating her into believing she was part of something meaningful. But it had all been a lie. She had seen the truth in his eyes. He wasn't a savior. He was a conqueror, willing to destroy anything in his path for power. If I've doomed anyone, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear pulsing through her, it's you. I've seen what you wanted to do. You don't care about the galaxy. You only care about yourself. You wanted to control the universe, and you used me to do it. Well, I'm not playing along anymore. The Emperor's expression darkened, and for a brief moment, Sarah wondered if he might attack. But then, something in his eyes shifted. It was subtle, but it was their flicker of doubt, a realization that Sarah might have done something irreversible. You don't understand, he spat, stepping forward. That ring was more than just power. It was a bond between worlds. You've broken that bond, and in doing so, you've disrupted the balance of everything. The consequences of your actions are far greater than you realize. Sarah felt a surge of panic in her chest. What had she done? The Emperor's words echoed in her mind, and for the first time she doubted herself. But she couldn't let him win. She had made a choice, and now she had to see it through. You're wrong, Sarah said, stepping forward as well. I've broken nothing. I've stopped you from using that power for your own gain. The galaxy doesn't need someone like you in control. It needs balance, not a ruler who only wants to conquer. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, and Sarah could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was calculating, trying to decide if he should attack or find another way to manipulate her. He was no longer the Emperor who had seemed so certain of his victory. He was just a man who had lost everything, his plans unraveling before him. You've already taken the most important part of the prophecy from me, he said, his voice colder now. But that doesn't mean the power is gone. It's still here, still within this ship, and I will not let you stand in my way. Before Sarah could respond, the Emperor raised his hand, and a surge of energy shot through the room, aiming directly at her. Her heart skipped a beat as she instinctively ducked, narrowly avoiding the blast. She could feel the energy vibrating in the air, crackling with raw power. The Emperor was trying to force her into submission. But Sarah wasn't going to back down now. Desperation surged through her, and she glanced around the chamber for anything that might help. Her eyes landed on the control panel at the far end of the room, its lights flickering erratically. It was the ship's main console, the heart of the vessel. If she could access it, she might be able to override the systems, shutting down the Emperor's control over the ship. Don't even think about it, the Emperor warned, sensing her intentions. He lunged toward her, his speed frightening. But Sarah was faster. In a blur of motion, she darted toward the console, her fingers flying across the interface as she activated the emergency override. The ship groaned, its systems faltering as Sarah worked quickly, overriding the command codes the Emperor had set in place. The Emperor's voice rang out in frustration as he tried to stop her, but she was too determined. The ship's power was finally in her hands, and she wasn't about to let it fall into his grip again. Stop, the Emperor shouted, his voice rising in anger. But it was too late. The ship's systems powered down, the lights dimming as the energy core sputtered and died. The Emperor staggered back, his face contorted in disbelief. "You can't control it anymore," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "The ship is mine now, and so is the power." The Emperor's eyes flickered, with a mix of fear and realization. He had underestimated her. He had always thought of her as nothing more than a means to an end. But Sarah had proven him wrong. She was not just a pawn in his game. She was the one who had broken free of his control, and now she had the power to shape the future. For a moment there was silence between them. The Emperor, broken and defeated, stood still, his hands trembling at his sides. Sarah couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for him. He had been consumed by his own ambition, blinded by his desire for control. But now it was over. "I'm not going to kill you," Sarah said, her voice softening. "But I'm not going to let you control the galaxy either. You've lost. It's time for you to face the consequences." The Emperor's face twisted with rage, but he didn't move. The reality of his defeat was sinking in. He had failed. His empire was crumbling, and Sarah had played a role in bringing it all down. As Sarah turned her back on him and walked toward the control panel, she felt a sense of finality. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. She had made her choice, and whatever the future held, she knew she had the strength to face it. With the Emperor's reign finally over, Sarah activated the ship's self-destruct sequence, ensuring that the Emperor's plans would be permanently erased. As the countdown began, she made her way to the escape pod, her heart pounding. She was free at last. The future was uncertain, but Sarah knew one thing: she had chosen her destiny, and it was hers to shape.